What can you make from baked beans and onions?
Baked beans and onions. I don't know.
Tear gas.
Oh. Hungry Squared, bringing you the best food talk anywhere.
Welcome to the Hungry Squared podcast, where the brain and belly meet. I'm Sharon from the Wasatch Cooking Guide.
And I'm Winter from theredparty.com. This week, we're talking all about the tear-inducing onion.
Onions.
They make me cry. Let's talk about it. Hungry Squared, yeah, Hungry Squared. Sharon, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too. I'm getting a little sick.
Oh no.
I'm sorry.
I've been sick.
Yeah.
I've had a really hectic couple weeks at work, working off site at a different hospital than normal, and we were passing it around.
Well, rude.
It was rude.
Yeah, it's been a good week, and we did celebrate Halloween, and that sure was fun.
It was fun. What did you go as?
Well,
what did Lucy go as?
We had a group costume, and Lucy was a heart-shaped sun. I was a heart-shaped moon, and Lee went as Bonnie Tyler, who sang the Total Eclipse of the Heart. It was totally obnoxious, but it was pretty fun.
That's awesome.
But we got some good loot and had a ton of chocolate. I mean, like, there's so much chocolate in our house right now.
Yeah, when I came in, Lucy was very excited to share with me.
Yeah, she's very nice that way.
She is.
What'd you eat this week?
We smoked a brisket on the big green egg.
Ooh.
It was good.
How long did that take?
That was an all-day affair.
Mm.
I believe that was about 12 hours or something.
Oh, so that is a solid, like, get up at 6 a.m. and tend that baby all day long.
It was we're going to eat a little later.
Gotcha.
Kind of thing.
Any special rub on that?
Ike came up with a rub. He's really good at that, creating his own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So he looked online at several different recipes and got an idea of everyone's technique and what they're doing. And then he did his own kind of rub with whatever we had in the house. I have no idea.
And sometimes that's
I'll be honest.
That's what you got to do. Ooh, that sounds lovely.
We have an extensive spice collection that I finally conceded to get a spice rack and dedicate 1.5 shelves in our kitchen to. In a cupboard.
We have one cupboard full of spices and sundry items to make food taste better.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun that way, I think.
Yeah, so he's very excited because before I was keeping them all in like a space-saving crate, like a cute little wooden milk crate type thing. But in order to find them, you have to pull them out and kind of know where
you put them back in.
Right. So, I mean, we kind of had an order that we put them in, but he just likes it now because you can see them, and he is right. You're right. That
Ike, if you're listening,
it's a lot easier to see them and find them quickly.
We finally got stadium seating for our spices.
Yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, it's like the best. Because now you can see what spices are hanging out and cheering for you.
Yeah, we went to the Container Store and spent not very much money. I think it was like less than $10 to get this thing that enriched our cooking lives. So, what did you eat this week?
Well, I mentioned that we had a lot of chocolate, and I've been eating a lot of chocolate. And I also had some gourmet chocolate that I didn't get from trick-or-treating.
Oh.
And if you were following us on Instagram, I already posted a picture of it. It's called Pump Street Chocolate, and it's a bakery located in Suffolk, England. I don't even think I said that right. Suffolk.
Yeah.
Suffolk.
That's right.
Sorry, guys. And
I think they pronounce it Suffolk.
Oh, yeah, that right. Yes, Suffolk, England. And this particular brand of chocolate, I got it from somebody who purchased it at Tony Caputo's. It's a kind of a gourmet grocery store that imports really nice goods, cheeses and chocolates and oils and that type of thing. So, but this particular chocolate caught my eye because it was sourdough and sea salt. And I'm like, because sourdough, whenever I think of sourdough, I think of the bread, right? Or I think of a starter sourdough.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm like, a little skeptical. But then I ate it and I was delighted. I just loved it. What they did actually was, because they're a bakery as well, they made their sourdough bread and then they crumbled it. Like, I think they super dehydrated the bread, kind of crouton-y, right?
Right.
Then they crumbled it and it's kind of sprinkled throughout this chocolate, this dark chocolate, just 66%. I think it was called Hacienda Limon. And it's delicious. And it has some sea salt in it. So these crumbles give a fun texture. It's a little like, so I gave Sharon a little bit right before we started.
It's really good.
Recording. And it kind of has a texture of like a crackle bar.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Rice Krispie texture. They've got some bite to them, but they're really tiny.
Yeah. And the tanginess of the sourdough kind of sings through. And I love sourdough. So this was my jam all the way. There are some people that have tried it that were like, I don't know about this. Or like, nope, don't like it at all. And I'm like, really? Oh, that's a shame. And then,
who did you guys try it with?
So I gave some to Lee and jury's still out for him. He's not,
really?
He's totally not sure.
Oh,
yeah.
It's kind of disappointing.
I know. I was
a little like a new favorite.
Yeah, me too. It was definitely like, I'm going to get this for a fun treat. One of my coworkers had it and she does not like sourdough. So she just did not like it. Cause I think there's a pretty good, it's not like overwhelmingly sourdough, but it is sourdough. So that's what I ate and I loved it.
Winter, do you have our listener mail this week?
Oh my gosh, I do. Yeah. Hold on a second. So we got a listener mail from one of her name is Jessie and
Hi, Jessie.
She's actually known as Jessie the Therapist online because she has her own podcast called Get Yourself Together.
Oh, that's a good title.
I totally love it. And she has a co-host as well, Jackson. And I was really quite excited to get this little email where she's like, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I mentioned your podcast on my blog today about podcasts that make your brain happy. And I was like, yay! And so I was pretty excited about that. And then we just kind of got talking. But if you ever haven't heard of Get Yourself Together, the podcast, or heck, even jessiethetherapist.com, there are a lot of fun resources there. They talk about stuff that is kind of serious in nature, but they have a good, like, I wouldn't say a lighter or a more humorous take on it, but that's kind of what they do. And it's really fun. Like their last episode that they just had was on social media. And there are a lot of people that don't know how to use social media really well.
Yeah, just take a look at any Twitter. Of your feeds. Any of your feeds. Yeah. There's tons of people that don't.
Yeah. And so it was a fun little conversation just to be like reminded of certain things, but then also have some funny stories and stuff like that. So if you get a chance to go visit them at Get Yourself Together podcast or jessiethetherapist.com. But thanks, Jessie, for writing in. That was really sweet of you.
And now for the main course.
Okay, let's get down to our first topic at hand. Onions.
Onions. Sharon, do you like onions?
I do. I know a lot of people who don't.
Yeah.
I was going to make some type of a joke about The Onion, the news, the
Onion, the news.
Satire news site. It's satire news. Yeah. It's not real news.
Yeah, it's not real news.
But I didn't really.
But it's hilarious, actually.
There's a joke in there somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking of it. I do like onions. I like them a lot. We use them all the time when we cook. All the time.
Yeah.
Most dishes that we cook at my house have onions and garlic in them. That's just how it is. I know a lot of people who don't like onions, and I even know a few people who like the flavor but don't like to eat them. And so they will cook something, like they'll cook a base of something with onions in it and then take the onions out.
Really?
Yeah, I know 2 people that do that.
Interesting.
I won't name their names.
Okay, I think that might be a good idea because they'll be like, thanks a lot.
Yeah, they probably would.
Yeah. I did not love onions when I was growing up.
Oh, really?
Nope. I'll take that back. I love them cooked. I could not handle them raw.
Yeah, I was the same way. I started my first onion that I had raw. My first type was a red onion.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of the way to go because they're sweeter.
Yeah, that's a good starter onion, raw onion. My daughter, Lucy, is I consider her a little bit of a freak of nature because she loves raw onions. She loves all the onions, but she especially loves them raw.
Does she really?
She will cut them up.
She will eat anything. That kid will eat anything.
Well, she's kind of funny. She doesn't eat a lot, but
I've seen her eat a lemon.
Yeah, she's weird. She's a freak of nature. She loves lemons and limes. And then she also loves onions, raw onions. It's the weirdest thing. Okay. And she calls them spicy.
Oh, yummy.
Yeah. So we are talking today about onions because I posted a picture on Instagram a couple weeks back and it caused a lot.
It caused a stir.
It caused a stir.
A bit of a stir.
I was a little surprised because I said, "Hey, who likes onions?" It was kind of I think it was a general like, "Who's on board with onions?" And there were some people that were like, "Oh yes," and it was a picture of a red onion, right?
It was beautiful.
It was a beautiful sliced red onion.
Yeah, it was cut across the equator so you could see all the rings.
And so there was a good majority of the people that said, "Oh my gosh, I love red onions." They were all about it. And then there were some people that are like, nope, hate them. Definitely hate them. I think they're rude. They're like assaulting of the senses. And yeah. And so that caused a lot of kind of back and forth and talking about onions. And so we were like, we need to do an episode on onions because it's fascinating. So onions in general, they're a bulbous vegetable. Would you say a bulbous vegetable?
Yes.
And it is the genus and species is Allium cepa, or I think it's Allium cepa, CEPA in Latin. So we're going to be talking about onions specifically, but the onion family, there's some relatives of the onion that you probably have eaten: garlics, shallots, leeks, chives, and maybe even the Chinese onion. Now, obviously, onions they're around mostly for food, a food source, right? However, I'm sure there's other things that onions have been used for besides eating, and we can maybe talk about that a little bit later. As you know, well, I don't know, maybe you don't know anything about onions, but if you don't know anything about onions, what's wrong with you? And the other thing is that there are layers, right? They always joke about like, I'm like an onion. I've got many layers or something ridiculous like that. So, but you've got root systems that come down. You've got the bulb that continues to grow as it's planted and cultivated. And then occasionally you have some stuff that shoots upward. And that's sometimes where you, like, for example, like a green onion is that way. It has kind of I wouldn't even say a bulb of any sort. The part that goes into the ground.
Root. Very short roots.
But then that one shoots up your green onion stalks, which is what you use for culinary uses. So it has been around for a long time.
Long time. Pretty much forever.
Yeah.
Onions were mentioned in the Old Testament.
Yes. I think in Exodus.
Yes.
They talked about, like, I'm going to pull up the scripture because, it's in Numbers. Excuse me. It's Numbers 11:5. It says, "We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic." So it has been around for a long time. And they, of course, archaeologists have been able to find different remnants or some sort of like remnants of onions back in the day. So, but
yeah, so
China,
we're talking
Egypt,
thousands
Persia,
and thousands of years old.
Yeah, basically.
Not just since when the Bible was translated by a monk in the 15th century or whatever, but they are thousands and thousands of years old. And nobody really knows when they kind of started being cultivated. They were not necessarily always there, but there's a lot of areas of the world where they are native.
Yes. So China, Egypt, there's many, Persia, they are all over the place. And they have been domesticated, obviously, as they realized that this was something that was desirable for culinary reasons, as well as, I think, medical reasons.
Yes.
Pliny the Elder. I don't know if you're going to talk about him or not, but there are many things that it has been used for. So that's the basics of an onion. I think, Sharon, I only know a handful of onions, and I maybe should be a little bit more aware of them, but I know of like the basic white onion. I know a yellow onion. I know the red onion and green onions. Right. That's pretty pathetic, but I'm like, is that all the onions I know?
Well, there's a sweet onion. You see those Vidalia onions a lot. I think they're from Georgia. There's a Vidalia in Louisiana, but I'm pretty sure that they don't grow there because the soil is pretty sulfuric there. But these sweet onions are a spring onion. To say that it's sweet, it'd be more accurate if you said it was mild. It's a standard yellow spring onion, and it's grown in sulfur-poor soils.
Sulfur-poor?
Yeah, so it has less of the usual amounts of the sulfur-containing defensive chemicals that are in an onion. So less likely to make you cry. That onion-like smell is not as strong and that kind of stuff. They're used in a variety of foods. I mean, kind of the same as you would use a white or a yellow. But these sweet onions are also good raw, like a red onion would be. It's just a little bit more mild flavor.
Okay.
And not as strong as a red onion. So
red onions are super.
They are strong, but they are also good raw in small amounts.
Yes.
Large amounts, I think any onion could be overpowering.
You think?
And I'm sure many people argue that it's way too overpowering.
Yes.
Some more about the flavor profile of onions. When they're heated, the various sulfur compounds react with other substances to produce a wide range of flavor molecules. So depending on the cooking method, you could get different types of flavors if you caramelize them. So you just keep sauteing and just keep cooking them down until they kind of start to char. It gets really sweet.
Yes. Well, you're getting some caramelization because there's the sugar in the onions, in some of those types of onions. And then also kind of almost, I would say, Maillard too.
Yep.
Right?
A little bit.
Because you're kind of browning. Yeah.
But if you bake them or dry them or even microwave them, that can generate what's called trisulfides. So the characteristic note of that would be overcooked cabbage.
Yeah, they do not. Ugh. Yeah. That's not I don't know if you guys have smelled that before, but it's gross. I think it's gross smelling.
Yeah. It's just
overcooked cabbage
or yeah. If you cook it at high temperatures and fat, you'll get more volatiles and a stronger flavor than other techniques. So yeah, it just kind of depends. The flavor, it's really interesting because the flavor can be affected by what types of oils or fats that you're using to cook it into.
That's so interesting.
So it can be slightly pungent or sweet, the sulfury to the incredibly sweet side. It's this wide scale.
Right. And I definitely like the milder ones, I want to say, and the sweeter ones. That's the way I roll. So
yeah, it just depends on how you're cooking them.
Yeah.
Because you can achieve that effect even with a white or yellow onion. You don't have to have a sweet onion or a red onion or green onions to do that.
You can just bring out different notes depending on what you're trying to achieve long term.
Depending on the temperature and the fat that you're cooking it in.
Okay, nice. Any other interesting facts about onions you want to chat about?
Well, I saw a lot of interesting facts on the National Onion Association website.
Oh, that's a thing?
It is a thing. It's the National Onion Association of the United States.
Okay.
Let me just...
Okay, so is this a governing body for other producers of onions, or is it like they're the ones that get out the name of like, you should use onions in your stuff?
Both.
Oh, okay.
So they are a multifaceted organization with 5 major objectives.
Oh.
For compiling and disseminating onion industry information.
Oh.
Increasing the visibility and consumption of onions.
Yep. Okay.
Tracking federal, legislative, and regulatory issues.
Oh. Yeah, you gotta protect your onions from too many taxes and such, right?
They monitor international trade. And they conduct industry-wide educational conventions.
They do?
Yes, they do. They sure do.
I want to go to an onion convention, Sharon.
Okay, we'll put that on the bucket list for 2018.
If the National Onion Association would like us to come out, we'd love to podcast during one of your
If you have any connections with the National Onion Association, please email us at hungrysquared@gmail.com.
I would love that. We would love that.
We're also on Instagram at hungrysquared.
Okay, continue on.
But for real. They have some information that is very compelling, interesting, I don't know, fascinating, or just odd.
Let's hear it. I want to hear it.
So they have a couple of myths about the onion that they want to clear up.
Okay, let's hear it.
Question: can raw onion prevent the flu?
Now, there is a tale, isn't there? Of like George Washington, he would try and
It's a lot of people.
Is it?
So there's no scientific evidence that a cut raw onion absorbs germs or rids the air of toxins or poisons. But an old wives' tale that dates all the way back as far as the 1500s claims that placing a cut raw onion in rooms throughout a residence can protect its occupants from getting the bubonic plague.
Cut raw onions.
Yeah. Long before germ theory was discovered, there was a belief that, and it was a dominant belief, that contagious diseases were spread by miasma or noxious air.
Yes.
And so people would put these cut onions, they would cut up an onion and put parts of it throughout the house to absorb all of the bad air. And they thought that would ward off the plague, the flu, smallpox, and other infectious fevers.
Yes. Yeah.
It does not.
It does not. Well, that's a bummer.
So if you're sick, you need to go to the doctor and don't just rely on an onion.
Okay.
Also, something that was interesting is the other main myth that they like to clear up is, are cut onions or leftover onions poisonous? So their answer is, when handled properly, cut onions are not poisonous. After being cut, onions can be stored in a refrigerator in a sealed container for up to 7 days. Now, I thought it was interesting that they would just put that on there, but they go into a little bit more detail.
I didn't know that was a thing.
I did not either. But a widely circulated claim states that uncooked leftover onions are quote unquote poisonous because they're a huge magnet for bacteria. So they're likely to spoil easily.
And contaminate everything else? Is that what
not contaminate everything else,
just
but
be
like
poisonous because of the
you
bacteria.
don't want to use that again.
Okay.
Like it's kind of, this claim was kind of a one and done use for an onion. Don't just use half your onion and store it. They were claiming that it will be poisonous.
Who was claiming this?
So this claim stems from a blog post that dates back to March 2008. Now, the original post was removed from the internet in 2009, but parts of that post continue to circulate around the internet.
Of course they do. It's the internet, people.
So for more information about the false nature of this claim, please read the attached consumer letter from the National Onion Association.
That they issued to this blogger?
It's an open letter.
Oh, snap.
Hilarious. Yeah. It's undated because it's just this open letter. So the National Onion Association is located in Greeley, Colorado. Maybe we should take a road trip. It's not too far.
That's not very far away from us.
Yeah. So here's the letter. It reads, "Dear concerned consumer, an article circulating on the internet claims cut onions and potatoes are responsible for more food poisoning than spoiled mayonnaise." So they call her out. Sarah McCain wrote the article under the pen name Zola Gorgon. The article was posted in March 2008 at McCann's website, dinnerwithzola.com, after she toured Mullins Food Products facility. There is not any scientific basis that cut onions are a magnet for bacteria. According to the Center for Food Safety at the University of Georgia, juice released from cut onion is known to kill or inhibit the growth of several types of microorganisms, including some capable of causing human illnesses.
Yeah.
When cut, onions release compounds that do not promote pathogen growth. This is the same compound that causes our eyes to produce tears. When handled properly, cut onions can be stored in the refrigerator in a sealed container for up to 7 days. The claim about onions in the article by McCann has caused a great deal of concern. Please pass the word along to your family and friends that onions can be enjoyed when handled properly.
Oh my goodness.
Thanks again, Kimberly J. Redden, Director of Public and Industry Relations of the National Onion Association.
Oh, snap.
So I need to say, put out a disclaimer that I have not read that article. It was removed from the internet. I've not been to that website, so I have no idea about it. And I don't know about her experience when she toured this food products facility and what they told her. So I don't know. But this is on the National Onion Association website.
It was a big enough deal.
They also have some really good recipes on their website.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. They have, let's see, I saw a sheet pan jambalaya.
A what?
Yeah, it looked interesting.
How do you make a sheet pan jambalaya?
I don't know.
Because jambalaya feels like needs to be in a pot.
Yeah.
It's just me.
Traditionally, yes.
Okay.
But they have a lot of good stuff on.
I'll put a link
website
in the show notes. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was just very interesting and informative.
Oh my goodness.
I had no idea that this place existed.
But
it was fun doing research about the onion.
You do need to have an association to help promote a thing. There's not a brand of, right? There's not necessarily a brand of onion. They just represent onions in general.
But if you're an onion farmer, you can join this association.
Oh, good.
They give you more visibility and that kind of thing.
That's awesome. Okay, onions. That's awesome. Sharon, one of the things that I have major beef with onions is they make me cry.
Yeah, they do.
Do they make you cry?
It depends. Depends on the onion.
Okay. I have tried a few things, and it wasn't really until I started delving in deeper into this whole onion thing to really understand what was causing things to happen. And so why do onions make you cry? Some people may already know this, but you've already mentioned this already, that sulfur is a large part of, sulfur compounds are a large part of what makes up an onion. And there's a gentleman, he wrote, and he's a chemist. His name is Eric Bloch, and he published a book called Garlic and the Other Alliums, The Lore and the Science. So he does go into some onions and obviously garlic, because they're, once again, they're all related. So yeah, we talk about this intense flavor of onion, right? And that kind of acrid odor of onions, right? When you cut it, it has a smell. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's kind of a refreshing, wouldn't you say? Almost sometimes a fresh smell. And then other times I've smelled onions and they smell like
noxious fumes.
Body odor.
Noxious fumes.
And so these are called, this particular substance is in onions are, like you mentioned, thiosulfonates. And the enzymes known as alanases contained in the onion cells interact with the proteins that are present in the vegetable. So when you cut an onion, you are disrupting you're rupturing the cells with these enzymes in it. And they are they have a very strong smell to it. And then they start reacting with the proteins and stuff in the onion, the other parts of the onion. And that's what creates these smells. Now, that's why you kind of sometimes get a sulfury smell, because that's what's happening. And so I was wondering, like, how do I prevent my onion from smelling like noxious fumes, aka body odor, aka overpowering anything if you're using it in a raw form, right? Because that's kind of the tricky thing is containing that flavor, getting that really fresh, crispy zip, I guess, but not having it go too far to the BO side.
Right. Because I'm going to put out a guess because I don't know.
Yes, let's hear it.
It's about refrigeration.
There is a little bit to that. So,
okay, tell me.
This is one thing that I found is that, actually, let me ask you a quick question. How do you cut your onions?
Like the directions and stuff?
Yeah. So do you cut it?
I cut it root to stem.
Root to stem. Okay. So that's pole to pole.
If it's like a globe, like the earth, I cut it longitudinally.
Okay.
And I don't cut it across the equator unless I need onion rings. Otherwise, I will always cut it
pole to pole.
Yeah. Pole to pole.
Okay. Well, longitudinally would be flat, right? That would be equator.
That's latitude.
Flat. Yep.
Yeah. So up and down.
So
if you're holding the onion, I cut it up and down.
Perfect. So that one is with if you cut with the grain, which is pole to pole, right? Then you're gonna actually disrupt less cells and release less enzymes that way.
Yep.
And so, but if you do it against the grain, then you're against the grain. So you're cutting open all of these cells early on, and it's going to create more of these interactions between these enzymes and the rest of the onion to create those thiosulfonates. So it's going to be you're going to have a better chance of it not smelling pungent. Now, let's go one more step. Why does it make you cry? Because there's the smell of the onion, right?
There's those enzymes that are acting up.
Yes, exactly. So that particular enzyme was not discovered. They thought it was just, it's only this particular chemical irritant, but they always blame this allanase when you cut the onion. But recent studies in Japan, and this was in 2002 actually, they discovered a new enzyme called lacrimatory factor synthase. So it's an enzyme.
That makes you cry.
Yes.
Lacrimatory.
Yeah, because lacrimatory is your lacrimal gland, which is your tear duct, kind of your tear gland. It's released into the air when we cut into the onion. And then it converts the amino acid sulfoxides of the onion into sulfenic acid. And that sulfenic acid just does some rearranging into a different compound called syn-propanethyl S-oxide. And that gets into the air and comes into contact with your eye. So I'm not going to totally disclose the fact that the onions cut up and sitting in the room, it helps with the noxious gases. There is something actually that was released from these onions.
Yeah. It's the onion's fault. Right?
And then the lacrimal glands become irritated and they produce the tears.
I have noticed though, so I don't currently do this, but when I was single, I did. Because Ike would not, given the choice, he would never refrigerate a fruit or a vegetable.
He wouldn't?
Nope, not at all. I like my apples really crispy though, and cold. And so I always put them in the refrigerator. But if he's unloading the groceries, they're out on the counter. So I always have to remind him no, I need that in the fridge. I need these berries in the refrigerator. Otherwise they're going to go bad tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we keep our onions out on the counter. But when I was single, I would refrigerate them. And I know that's not necessarily the best way to store them long term, but I noticed that they didn't make me cry as much as when they were room temperature. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit more. So now that we know that there's these compounds when you cut them, there's the allanases that react, this enzyme that reacts to some other parts of the onion. That's what causes the BO flavor, BO smell, I guess. And then this lacrimal synthase enzyme that affects your tear ducts. Now, so what can we do in order to prevent onions from making us cry? So obviously, we've talked about cutting pole to pole. So do that. That's one thing. Second thing, use a sharp knife. Right. Because if you're using a dull knife, you're just going to damage more of those cells. So sharp knife, people. You should be using a sharp knife anyway. It's safer, I think. No, it's a fact. It's a fact. Okay. It is a fact. Sharp knives are safer in the kitchen. Okay. So the next thing I would recommend is so when you cut it pole to pole, right? Now you have two onion halves. You have basically two exposed sides just out in the nowhere. I cut it exposed side down. Yes. I follow the grain of the onion and make cut marks that way. And I don't cut all the way to the stem. Like I leave it connected at the stem. The little... It's the root part that has been in the ground, I guess I should say, the root. I leave it connected right there. And so then I start making slices into it. And then I cut crossways into a dice. So that's perfect because of the fact that you mentioned that you plop it down, face down, the exposed part down onto the thing. So basically keep all the exposed parts away from you because once again, those enzymes need to escape in order to do the thing that they're doing. So I think that's great. It's also the fastest way to dice an onion. Yes, it is. And it's the prettiest. It kind of is very consistent when you do it that way. I'll put a link in the show notes for a couple of different ways to dice an onion properly and to diminish the amount of crying that may be had. Yeah. Okay, the next thing, you can chill your onions. So with a cold onion, you have less of that propanethyl S-oxide that will evaporate off if it's in the fridge. Now we don't, and once again, this is an irritant to the eye, so we don't
it's not going to totally get rid of it, but it's going to help evaporate some of it beforehand.
It does reduce it so your mascara doesn't run as much.
It's always good. So now don't freeze them, because then if you freeze them, have you ever frozen an onion before?
I've frozen diced onions and reused them.
They just kind of turn out yet mushy for me. Like they just never have the same.
It's not exactly the same because there's a lot of water content into them.
And you can burst those cells anyway because it's expanding.
It does change it. But when I've used like frozen onion, it's mostly been for camping purposes. Mm-hmm. So we're putting it in a Dutch oven.
Anyway.
It's still like you're still getting flavor and stuff, but it's not as good as when you chop it fresh.
Gotcha. So that's one thing, is to chill the onions. Now, also kind of related to that is that if you're going to be putting an onion into like raw onion into a salad or something, what you can do so it doesn't overpower the entire dish. Because that was one of the things that one of our commenters on Facebook said, hey, like, I don't like this onion. I don't like red onions because I think it's a bully. Like it demands all of your attention. And I was like, yeah, it kind of does. And I think
depends on what you're pairing it with.
Yes. Well,
if you ever put lemon juice on it, that acid's really good.
So the thing to tone it down. The other thing that chefs swear by is that you can cut up some onions and then soak them in cold water, ice cold water, because the water is going to wash away some of those enzymes that are there that will react. And so it'll just be a milder flavor. So just 30 minutes if you can. And they will be crisper if you think about it, because it's you've got osmosis happening too. The water from the bowl is going into the onions because it's more concentrated in the onion itself. And so it's going into the onion. Your cells will get bigger and they will be crispier too. So there's kind of a couple benefits for that. Less crying, and then your onion's going to be crispy.
That's cool.
Which is nice. So, and then I mean, you can obviously, if you're cutting it in the kitchen, you could turn on your vent, like your hood vent, right? Mm-hmm. That definitely helps move things out and away. And then if all else fails, you can bust out a pair of like swim goggles or something. They do have those onion cutting goggles that you can put on. And I think they're really funny, but if it really affects you, you should go for it.
My brother used to swear by matches when we were in our 20s. Like early 20s, just starting out on our own and stuff. And we lived by each other and we would cook together sometimes with our roommates and whatnot. And nobody wanted to chop onions. No. And here I got the job most of the time. And we hated it because we would cry. And so Brian used to shove matches in my mouth, not the match end. Like
no, but just
the wood end.
Tip. Yeah, I mean not the tip, the wood end.
The wood end. So he would shove several, and he would swear that the wood soaks up the sulfur smell. I don't think that's true. We mostly just look like idiots with matches in our mouth while we're trying to cook and chop these onions.
Okay, that's awesome.
And then he finally got like, I don't even know what they were. They were like eye protection, like a construction worker would wear or something.
Oh yeah.
Like
basically some
industrial safety goggles that he kept in the kitchen drawer.
If it works, it works, because you don't want that what's being released into the air to come into contact with your lacrimal gland. So that's hilarious. I'm curious, and I just want to put it out there. How do you avoid crying with onions? What's your technique? Because I've just put in, like, as I've read a lot of articles recently, those are what I found to be. I'm like, I'm going to try that one, because I usually cut the onion pole to pole, and that helps considerably, I think. So I don't know. So
let us know at hungrysquared@gmail.com.
Yeah, it'll be good fun. Do you have any more?
No, I think that's good.
Oh, okay, cool.
Let's have a food fight.
Food fight, food fight, food fight, food fight. It's winter.
This is a segment where you can email us with your relationship questions relating to food. You can email us at hungrysquared@gmail.com.
Disclaimer, we are in no way professional relationship experts, but you should totally listen to us anyway. If you need professional help, please seek it out.
Food fight, food fight, food fight, food fight. The food fight segment of the show. Here we go.
Winter, do you have this week's question?
I surely do. And I think that we both can relate to this a little.
Oh, okay.
So, dear ladies, how am I supposed to deal with a food snob significant other who works as a cook and thinks they know everything? They always want to eat out, but will not deign to eat anywhere, even semi-normal. And we can't afford pricey places just because their food is gourmet. Sincerely, sometimes a burger is just a burger.
Oh, dang.
Okay, we both are...
I've been in this situation.
We both have significant others that work, that are in the culinary business, in a sense, have been trained. And there are times that this kind of happens. But I will give credit to Lee because sometimes we just eat whatever too.
Yeah, Ike's that way. Like he's good at eating cheaply, but he does have a very good, well-developed palate. Yeah, so it kind of goes either way for us as well. But I did have years and years ago a significant other, this is probably like 10 years ago, that was like that, and he would never eat at cheap places, and it always had to be really nice. And we went out to eat a lot, and as consequently, we were poor. Quite poor. He was poor. I was poor. Because we spent most of our money on these restaurants and this gourmet food. And I'll tell you, it is not worth it. It's not worth it. Learn to cook.
And I was going to say, Sharon, I remember this person.
Yes, you do.
I remember this person.
Surely do.
And you guys are both great cooks. And so I'm a little surprised that I know that you did because we would occasionally have dinner together in some shape or form. And so I'm a little surprised that you didn't do more cooking than that.
I mean, we did, but we both worked, kind of long day. It was especially happened during the week.
Right.
You would think it would happen on the weekends, but it always happened during the week where you'd work a really long day or a double shift or something, and you're just too tired.
Yeah.
So you're like, here, take my money. Just give me some good food. So it's lazy. It's lazy for one, but it's just not worth it. I would say I would agree that sometimes a burger is just a burger, but I also agree with the gourmet factor.
Me too.
I don't think a McDonald's burger is just a burger. I'll call it out. I'll call them out. It's not good. It is not good. But you can cheaply make some of that gourmet food at home. I think it just requires a little bit more planning ahead.
Yep.
And thinking and having some go-to meals, like some fallback go-to meals that, it's the same concept when you're trying a new diet or something like that. You always need to kind of keep a list of stuff that's like your staples and a list of meals that can be made out of your pantry that still tastes like you went to an Indian restaurant or something.
Right. I also agree with you on that because cooking is way less expensive than going out. Even though Lee will occasionally purchase, actually, what am I talking about? Whenever he buys a steak, he buys a ribeye, because that's
because it's yummy.
Because it's yummy and it's our steak of choice. But if you have those things in place, that definitely helps. I am going to also say to sometimes a burger is just a burger. To when you say semi-normal places, I would say, because it sounds like you kind of like maybe, I don't know.
Maybe a chain
or something that is fast food or fast casual, like they say. And then the pricey places are usually the sit down places that have, let's say they have table service and you have to pay a tip and all that jazz. And so it does add up. So I'm going to say that because I like to eat out a lot.
Right.
So does Lee. Like we like to eat out because it's fun to see what people do with food.
Right.
So find a middle ground. Like you're not going to go and I would say talk about it because you got to talk about your budget because it sounds like you've got a significant other and your budgets may be overlapping at some point in time.
Right.
So
even if you're like, I pay this time, you pay that time.
Yeah, it's not going to.
Sometimes that works, except in my case, long ago, I used to get the short end of that stick.
You did?
Yeah, because like he would pay for a less expensive meal and then next time it's my turn. Like that was our understood thing as we kind of did like every other. But my turns more often than not
were the pricier
meals where we paid almost double of what his tabs were.
Oh, yeah. Don't get the short end of that stick. I'm just saying that chat about it as a couple and figure out what are some places that are very gourmet but inexpensive, because there are those places. You just have to find them. As well as, you know what? this will be, we're going to spend the money and go to this gourmet restaurant. And we just know that it's going to happen
Plan ahead so you can look forward to it.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you go to so many fancy places, it just becomes commonplace. It doesn't become special anymore, I think.
Exactly.
So I'm like, I'll tell you this right now. Lee and I love Ruth's Chris, but we've probably only been there like 3 times because it's a special occasion for us.
Right. That was your engagement restaurant and stuff. Yeah. But you don't want to go there all the time. It loses its specialness.
Exactly. And so I would just say kind of maybe spin it that way, is that these gourmet restaurants, as good as they are and as pricey as they are, they kind of lose their wow factor if you use them too often, I think.
I completely agree.
So maybe make a list of restaurants that you like to go to, some go-tos that are a little less expensive. Some of these quote unquote semi-normal restaurants.
Yeah.
And maybe ones that are middle ground too, because you can find plenty of very, very good food in a reasonably priced place, I think.
Yeah. And some options for those places would be to go to a different meal at that place.
Yes.
Do lunch or a brunch or a breakfast. Some of those nice restaurants, there's one here in Salt Lake City. It's called Market Street. They're open for breakfast at their downtown location.
Yes, they are.
And they open somewhere at like 7 or 8 o'clock.
Yep.
And their breakfast is about an hour, maybe 2 hours long, and then they close again. It's really good though.
And it's inexpensive because Market Street sells seafood, everything during lunch and
they
dinner.
Fry it in fresh daily because we're a landlocked state, but it's always fresh. It's always really good. It's high quality. But if you go to a different meal, a lunch or a breakfast, it's considerably less expensive.
Yes, that is a good idea.
You're paying like at least half the price of a dinner.
Yeah. The other things that you can find is use your Yelp guides, use your Urban Spoons, use your Google Maps and see what people are saying, because you're going to find some gems and you can convince your significant other that this is dang good food. And gosh, you only paid $5 for it.
Yelp is a treasure trove for those types of places, I think, where you can find
basically a hole in the wall restaurant.
That's really good.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So I don't know if we totally solved our problem. That's a tough one, because if you're pretty stuck on gourmet, you can kind of get stuck on gourmet.
But try to make it at home.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to try to make it at home. Like, you know what types of dishes you've had in the past for these gourmet places.
Yeah.
So try to replicate that same taste at home.
Do some copycat recipes. That's fun. That's a challenge. Challenge accepted.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to try and make a ribeye steak from Ruth's Chris now. Yummy. Oh, Lee does that. He does a good job. He does the butter and everything. It's so dang good.
Thanks for joining us today for our show. You can find us at hungrysquared.com, on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Music.
Thanks so much, you guys, for hanging out with us. We always appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, hit subscribe. We'd love it. And if you also have some food nerdy friends, let's share it with them. We would love that, because we enjoyed chatting with you food nerds out there. It's so much fun. Okay, well, join us next week for our next episode of Food Nerdery.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Bye.
Hungry Squared, yeah, Hungry Squared.